Most executives believe they communicate clearly. The data proves otherwise. In global teams, 70% of leadership failures trace back to misread emotion and misaligned verbal structure. Authority doesn't come from volume or position. It comes from precise language mapped to emotional awareness. That gap costs companies millions in lost deals, fractured teams, and reputational damage you can't repair with a press release.
Emotional intelligence isn't empathy theater. It's structural awareness of how your words land across cognitive and cultural systems. When you say, "we should consider this," a German executive hears indecision. A Japanese colleague interprets caution as respect. A Brazilian partner reads it as collaboration. None of them heard what you thought you said. That's not a soft skill problem. That's a precision problem.
You're listening to the Sense and Sound English podcast. I'm Jack, executive strategist. Here, we refine how leaders think, speak, and decide in global environments. Today, we're addressing something that determines influence before authority ever does. Emotional intelligence isn't about reading the room. It's about controlling the room through linguistic and emotional calibration.
I'm Morgana, cognitive and linguistic analyst. I focus on how language shapes perception across cultures. Today, we'll examine how emotional intelligence directly alters leadership impact in international teams. When emotional awareness meets structural English precision, you don't just communicate better, you eliminate the friction that silently destroys collaboration. Let's build that framework now.
Emotional intelligence contains 5 core components: self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skill. In executive English, those translate to recognition, control, drive, perception, and execution. Research from 2026 confirms that emotional intelligence accounts for over 50% of workplace performance. Top performers consistently rank high in this ability. It's not personality, it's disciplined observation converted into strategic action.
Self-awareness means identifying your emotional patterns before they dictate your verbal output. If you're frustrated, your sentence structure shortens. Your modal verbs disappear. You say, "do this," instead of, "we need to prioritize this by Friday." The first sounds reactive, the second sounds strategic. Portuguese speakers especially carry frustration into softened language with just or maybe. Remove those qualifiers when assigning responsibility. Authority increases immediately.
Self-regulation controls your reaction under pressure. In a tense negotiation, instead of saying, "that's not going to work," say, "let's examine the implementation challenges with that approach." You acknowledged the concern without escalating tension. You kept decision authority in the room. Mandarin speakers often use indirect refusal to preserve relational harmony. In English executive contexts, that reads as avoidance. Reframe refusal as redirection with clear reasoning.
Motivation drives how you inspire action. Weak leaders say, "we should try to improve this quarter." Strong leaders say, "we're targeting 15% growth by Q2. Here's the roadmap." The difference is commitment language. Modal verbs like should and could signal hesitation. Will and are signal execution. Spanish speakers frequently use future subjunctive structures that soften certainty in translation. Replace "we would need to" with "we need to." Precision eliminates ambiguity.
Empathy isn't agreement, it's recognition without surrender. Instead of saying, "I understand, but," say, "I see the concern about timeline, let's address resource allocation first." You validated the emotion, then redirected to structure. Hindi and Arabic speakers often extend empathy through elaborate relational phrasing. In global English business contexts, that delays decision clarity. Acknowledge briefly, then solve directly. Respect doesn't require length, it requires precision.
Social skill translates emotional awareness into relational leverage. It's not networking, it's strategic connection through calibrated language. When entering a multicultural meeting, adjust your sentence rhythm and modal verb density based on the dominant communication style in the room. Japanese and Korean professionals value procedural clarity and hierarchical respect. Use "I recommend we proceed with" instead of "let's just do this."
The first honors structure, the second ignores it.
Let's address conflict resolution directly. Weak version, I think there's a problem with the proposal. Strong version, the proposal creates 3 implementation risks. Let's prioritize mitigation. You replaced opinion language with factual framing. You converted complaint into action. German speakers often prioritize directness, which can read as aggression in collaborative cultures. Soften delivery through structure, not through dilution. State the problem, propose the path.
Disagreement without destruction requires surgical English. Instead of, that's incorrect, say, the data suggests a different conclusion. Let me walk you through it. You preserved relational capital while asserting accuracy. French speakers often use elaborate conditional structures to soften disagreement. In executive English, that creates perception of uncertainty. Replace, it might be better if we considered, with, we should evaluate an alternative approach. Confidence doesn't mean aggression, it means clarity.
Feedback delivery separates competent leaders from exceptional ones. Avoid, you need to improve your presentation skills. Use, your data analysis was solid. Let's refine how you open and close presentations for executive audiences. You gave specific direction with preserved dignity. Russian speakers often deliver feedback with blunt directness that can feel punitive in global teams. Balance honesty with developmental framing. Identify strength first, then target improvement with actionable structure.
Listening is an underestimated weapon. Most executives wait to speak instead of processing what's been said. High emotional intelligence leaders listen for emotional subtext and verbal patterns simultaneously. When someone says, I'll try to get that done, they're signaling doubt or capacity concern. Respond with, what's blocking completion, instead of accepting the deflection. You're solving the problem beneath the language. That's operational empathy.
Let's examine meeting leadership. Weak opening, thanks everyone for joining. Let's see what we can cover today. Strong opening, we have 3 decisions to make in the next 40 minutes. First, budget reallocation. Second, timeline adjustment. Third, stakeholder communication strategy. You set expectation, created urgency, and established control. Meetings fail when emotional intelligence is absent from structural design. Your language must guide attention and emotion simultaneously.
Cross-cultural emotional intelligence requires you to read what's not being said. In high-context cultures like Japan and Korea, silence signals disagreement or processing time. Don't fill silence with more talking. Pause, then ask, what concerns should we address before moving forward? You invited input without forcing confrontation. In low-context cultures like Germany and the United States, silence often means confusion. Clarify immediately with, let me reframe that. You're solving the problem beneath the language. That's operational empathy.
Status updates reveal emotional intelligence gaps constantly. Avoid, just wanted to update you on the project. Use, the project is on schedule. We resolved the vendor delay and confirmed delivery for March 3rd. You eliminated filler language and provided decision-grade information. The word just is a confidence killer. Portuguese and Spanish speakers use it frequently to soften communication. Remove it. Your authority increases the moment you stop apologizing for speaking.
Risk communication demands emotional intelligence precision. Weak version, there might be some issues with the timeline. Strong version, we're facing a 2-week delay due to supplier capacity. I've identified 3 mitigation options. You named the problem, owned the situation, and presented solutions. Arabic speakers often use elaborate contextual framing before delivering difficult news. In executive English, reverse the structure, lead with the risk, then provide context briefly. Speed matters in crisis communication.
Delegation exposes weak emotional intelligence immediately. Avoid, can you maybe handle this when you get a chance? Use, I need you to complete the financial review by Thursday at noon. Flag any discrepancies directly to me. You set expectation, deadline, and escalation path.
Mandarin and Japanese speakers often avoid direct commands to preserve group harmony. In international teams, that creates accountability gaps. Assign clearly. Respect doesn't require vagueness, it requires clarity.
Email communication strips emotional context, which makes linguistic precision critical. Instead of, I think we should reconsider the approach, write, I recommend we adjust the approach based on client feedback from Tuesday's call. You replaced uncertainty language with evidence-based reasoning. French and Russian speakers often use formal conditional tenses that increase perceived distance in English. Simplify structure. Replace, it would be advisable that we might consider with, we should. Confidence translates across languages through brevity.
Negotiation requires emotional intelligence and linguistic control simultaneously. Weak approach, we'd prefer a lower price. Strong approach, based on market comparison and volume commitment, we're targeting a 12% reduction. Here's the data. You anchored the request in logic, not preference. German speakers often lead with data, which can feel transactional. Balance evidence with relational acknowledgement. I value our partnership and want to ensure this works long-term, followed by your data creates trust without surrender.
Apologies require precision to avoid credibility damage. Avoid, I'm sorry if there was any confusion. Use, I apologize for the delayed response. The updated proposal is attached. You owned the error without deflecting responsibility. The phrase, if there was confusion, implies the other person misunderstood. That's accusation disguised as apology. Hindi and Arabic speakers often extend apologies with elaborate relational repair language. In executive English, brevity signals confidence. Acknowledge, correct, move forward.
Recognition language builds loyalty when deployed with emotional precision. Weak version, good job on the report. Strong version, your analysis on Q4 trends directly informed our strategy shift. Well done. You specified the value created, not just the effort. Korean and Japanese professionals especially value recognition that honors contribution to collective success. Use your work strengthened the team outcome instead of purely individual praise. Cultural emotional intelligence means adjusting recognition frameworks, not abandoning them.
Influence in global teams depends on reading unspoken hierarchies. In German and American cultures, challenging leadership is accepted if framed constructively. In many Asian and Middle Eastern contexts, direct challenge threatens group cohesion. Adjust your approach. Instead of, I disagree with that decision, say, I'd like to propose an alternative for consideration. You preserved hierarchy while introducing your perspective. Emotional intelligence isn't cultural relativism. It's strategic adaptation without principal compromise.
Let's address urgency communication. Weak version, we really need this done soon. Strong version, this is due Friday at 3 p.m., it's blocking the client deliverable. You quantified urgency and explained consequence. Russian speakers often use emphatic language that can sound harsh in collaborative cultures. Replace you must with we need to. It maintains urgency while distributing responsibility. Spanish speakers may overuse diminutives that reduce perceived urgency. Replace un momentito thinking with by end of day Tuesday.
Meeting closures demonstrate emotional and operational intelligence. Avoid, I think that covers everything, thanks everyone. Use, we've decided on the vendor, confirmed the timeline, and assigned ownership. I'll circulate notes by tomorrow morning. You summarize decisions, confirmed action, and set follow-up expectations. French speakers often conclude with open-ended relational language. In executive English, closure means clarity. Portuguese speakers may soften endings to preserve warmth. You can be warm and decisive simultaneously. Tone matters less than structure.
Here are 5 ready-to-use phrases for immediate application. 1. I'm following up on the decision from Monday's meeting. 2. Let's address the resource gap before we commit to the timeline. 3. I need your input on budget allocation by Wednesday. 4. The data supports a different approach. Here's the breakdown. 5. We're targeting completion by quarter end. Here's the milestone schedule. Each phrase eliminates ambiguity and positions authority.
5 more executive phrases. 1. I recommend we proceed with option 2 based on cost-benefit analysis. 2. Your proposal is solid. Let's refine the implementation timeline together. 3. I see the concern. Let's separate the technical issues from the resource issues. 4. We're facing a 2-day delay. I've already identified the workaround. 5. I appreciate the effort. Next time, flag risks earlier so we can adjust in real time. These sentences balance authority with collaboration.
Emotional intelligence at work isn't about being liked, it's about being effective across cognitive, cultural, and operational boundaries. Studies confirm that leaders with high emotional intelligence generate 58% higher engagement, 45% better collaboration, and 37% fewer conflicts. That's not soft skill impact. That's strategic competitive advantage measured in retention, revenue, and reputation. The leaders who master this don't just survive disruption, they define the response to it.
The word we've been building toward is calibration. Emotional intelligence without linguistic calibration is empathy without execution. Linguistic precision without emotional calibration is clarity without connection. When you combine both, you don't just lead teams, you eliminate the friction that prevents global teams from functioning at full capacity. That's the framework. Now you apply it. Thank you for listening.
This was the Sense and Sound English podcast. We've given you the structure, you bring the discipline. We'll be back next week with another framework that separates competent communication from executive influence. Until then, speak with precision.